I started realizing how important having executive presence was when I came to a meeting, a conference, and realized that whatever I said wasn't really taken seriously or people would speak over me. It was because I didn't know how to command a room. I didn't know how to speak and portray my ideas clearly. I was essentially very afraid for a long time to speak up during meetings, during any kind of strategy session, or even project meetings that were just of status updates with people that I knew very well. I had almost a fear of public speaking, but also a fear of what people would think of me if I said something stupid. So whenever I spoke up, I almost did it with a question mark in my voice every single time. And when I did speak up, it was because someone else had asked for my input, and my hands were shake, and I would put them underneath the table so that nobody could see how nervous I was. This didn't change for a long time. I didn't realize that I needed to adjust the way I presented myself and the way that I portrayed myself. Because if one day I wanted to be a leader that commanded respect, whose opinion was taken seriously, if one day I wanted to be the person that inspired confidence and trust in my project team, I needed to adjust the way that I brought myself to the table. And so that's how I learned about executive presence and how important it is to kind of have this sense of self-reflection on how you present yourself and how can you adjust, do little things to change how you present yourself to develop that executive presence. I was fortunate enough to have a lot of people that I was able to learn from. I would see their executive presence and how they would bring themselves to the table and how they would portray themselves. And I would learn how this specific person, I really trusted what they had to say. I really trusted their way of thinking about something because of the way they presented the information in such an informed way. This other person had this great way of motivating others, this great way of having influence over people, and they would motivate people to really work hard on whatever we were working on. So executive presence is different for everyone. There's not one specific way how to have executive presence. It's very specific to who you are and what you're bringing to the table. So here are a couple of things that I did to develop that executive presence. Number one, I had to work on my confidence. I had to work on how I trusted myself. And the way for me to gain confidence was for me to be very prepared. I had a lot of trust in the words that I was saying because I was very prepared. I had done my research. And so I was no longer afraid of what I was going to say, and there was no longer that little question mark in my voice because I was very well prepared, and I was no longer concerned that whatever I had to say would come off as stupid. And if I ever did make a mistake or say something that was a mistake, I had to learn to be okay with that. That was another way that I really built my confidence in myself, was having that really good sense of, I know what I'm doing, and if I make a mistake, it is a very honest mistake that anyone could make. And so I had to teach myself to not be afraid to make mistakes and to not worry about what other people thought about me. If I did make a mistake, you own it and you move on. One of the biggest, I would say, traits of someone that I trust and that I find intelligence is when people are capable of just saying, I don't know, I'll look into that. Or when they're capable of saying, I see your point, I made a mistake there, and moving on. So that is definitely one of the bigger things that I did to increase my confidence that helped a lot with my executive presence. Another way of increasing my confidence was putting myself out there in uncomfortable situations that weren't necessarily such high risks. So putting myself in professional organizations, in group-like settings that allowed me to practice my executive presence and allowed me to practice how I brought myself to the table. Executive presence has so much to do with the way you communicate and the way you provide your ideas in a clear and concise manner. Being able to bring your ideas to the table concisely and clearly is so, so important. I'm sure all of us have been in a situation when someone super, super smart is giving their opinion, but they're going way into detail, almost into too much detail, too much technical jargon, where you are just lost and have lost the point and are no longer interested in what they had to say. So I had to practice how to be concise, but also how to say it very clearly. One of the first things I started doing to gain the confidence to speak up in large group settings, in meetings that where I had clients, lots of people with way more experience than I do, was to learn how to ask questions in a way that helped me almost manage the conversation to a point that I was thinking. It helped me kind of gain confidence in what I was going to say because I asked that question first that I had a little bit of doubt on. And once I would get an answer, that would bring up a conversation and I was able to join in on the conversation. So it puts you in a position where it's like, hey, I'm still learning. I have multiple questions that I need answered before I can give my opinion. Another very important thing, which kind of sucks because I don't like the idea that your image says a lot about your intelligence and you as a person, but personal image is important. And that doesn't mean you can't bring yourself or show yourself in your personal image. I think I hope at least that we're getting away from that, judging people by what they're wearing because it doesn't adhere to the professional code. And I hope now we're able to show our personalities a little bit more. At least that's been my experience, but definitely coming to a room looking clean and collected, that's as much as I would say is important. The other one is your poise and composure. I am super fidgety. I need to be moving things around, doing this, looking through sheets. It's just what I need to be able to pay attention. But it also made me look a little distracted. It made me look with not great poise. So I learned to make my movements a little bit smoother, a little bit gentler. I learned how to move around with purpose. So if you can tell in my videos, I use my hands a lot when I'm speaking because that helps me with concentrating and not having to fidget around. If I am just not able to use my hands, I would just be writing and doodling on my notebook or writing down notes as detailed as possible because it helps me concentrate without fidgeting. So your poise, your composure are really important. Recently, I was in a meeting with lots of people where someone questioned my role and the reason why I was there. And I've been practicing executive presence for 10 years now, so it was really easy for me to command the room and explain who I was, why I was there, and why it was important for me to be there with a great sense of security. I was really proud of that moment. Okay, another part about executive presence is your emotional intelligence. If you lose your composure in sensitive conversations and during conflict resolution, you lose a little bit of that executive presence because it shows that you don't know how to regulate your own emotions. And emotional intelligence is a really big factor when it comes to your executive presence. Authenticity is also a key trademark of executive presence. Your type of executive presence is going to be very different from that guy over there because you have to be true to who you are and you have to be authentic. So if you are trying to develop this executive presence, emulating how someone else is, it's not going to work because fortunately humans are smart. They see straight through that stuff. If you bring yourself to the table, you can develop this executive presence much quicker rather than trying to emulate somebody else. If you're quirky, be quirky. If you're funny, be funny. If you're stoic, be stoic. Be who you are. That authenticity instills trust in others, and it also instills a lot of confidence in others to be themselves and to be able to bring the best version of themselves. Last thing I wanted to bring up about executive presence is that it is something that you can learn, and it is something that can be continuously improved. It is dynamic and it can change as you change as a person. I used to be this very bubbly, kind of quirky little 20-year-old and developing my executive presence, I always embrace that about myself. Lately, I'm less bubbly, I'm less quirky, I'm a little bit more reserved, and I'm embracing that about myself as well. So it is something you can definitely develop just by learning from people around you and by working on yourself, working on mindfulness, and that can help you in your career. All right, that's it. That's all I wanted to say about executive presence. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, everyone.